Welcome to Practice Intimacy. This is the place to be to learn all about love, sex, and how to have the best relationship you possibly can. My name is Jami Lynn. I am a therapist in the Austin area, and today what I wanted to talk about was one of the number one things that I'm looking out for anytime I meet a new couple in my office. And first I'll tell you what that is. I'll give you a little bit of an example of what I'm talking about. And then we'll get into some things that you can actually do to try and start breaking this pattern in your own relationship. And I'll also share one really simple, easy practice at the end that you can do immediately. Honestly, it is so helpful. There's research into how this technique brings couples together and helps them become more close after arguments and disagreements. Before we get started, remember, if you like this content, if you like these videos, remember to subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, send this to anyone you think would benefit. I do appreciate the support. So let's dig in. Today, we're talking about one of the main things that I see happening with couples that I'm constantly on the lookout for in my office, and I am hoping always to help people begin to shift because it creates such a difference in your relationship. And so the issue is the blame game. All of us know the blame game. All of us do it. It is part of life, and yet it is one of the most damaging things we can do in relationships. So what is the blame game? The blame game is whenever we look at our partner and we say to them, "You are the problem." And it might not be in those exact words, but in some way or another, we are telling them, "You're the problem. You need to change. Do your work. Fix this thing that you're doing, and then our relationship will be better and I will be happier." And usually both partners are doing this to each other. They're constantly looking at the other person's behavior and going, "I don't like what you did there. Change that, please." And there's nothing inherently wrong with this, okay? So making direct requests of people whenever you want them to change their behavior, there is nothing wrong with that. There's a whole video that I made about making direct requests and how to do it well, and how it's one of the main skills you can do to have a good relationship. At the same time, there's some realities about direct requests that are important. One is that the person can say no. They need to be able to say no. If you're asking them to change their behavior and they don't want to, then that's their choice. You will have to find a different way to try and navigate this experience that's unpleasant for you. And it could be all kinds of things. Maybe you just shift your behavior a bit so that whatever your partner's doing isn't as upsetting. And maybe it's more extreme than that. Maybe it means that this relationship is not the right one for you. But there is a limit to how much a direct request is going to do for you. That limit is whatever your partner feels comfortable agreeing to, wanting to work on. And that truly is their choice. The other thing about asking another person to change their behavior is it really does take away power from you. At least in the sense of you will have less influence over what happens. It's really up to your partner whether or not they're going to change. And they may or they may not. And you can't do anything to make them change. And so really, whenever you're expecting the other person to shift, you don't have as much power to influence what's going on in your relationship, to influence this dynamic or pattern that is upsetting to you. And so to shift this, the way to begin changing this so that your relationship improves and so that you have a felt sense of empowerment where you can influence what's going on, is instead of looking at them and saying, "You need to change," turn towards yourself, pay attention internally, and ask yourself, what can I do to change this situation? And it might be responding in a different way to whatever they're doing, responding differently than you've ever responded before, which when you change, the relationship changes. There's no way for it not to. The moment that we shift our pattern, our partner is either going to join us in the new shift, or in some cases, we grow apart because of shifts. As you do your personal development, as you do your work, as you take these moments to reflect on your behavior and go, is that actually the way I want to respond to my partner? Is this how I want to show up in my relationship? As you ask yourself these questions and you begin to develop and change, it's an invitation for your partner to join you, and they may choose to accept or not. And so instead of looking out at them and saying, you need to change your behavior, turn towards yourself and say, what can I do? How can I change something in the way that I'm reacting to the world that might make this better? And it could be all kinds of things that you change. I'm thinking of so many examples right now. If you've ever heard of Byron Katie, she's the creator of The Work, which is a wonderful, it's like a cognitive way of checking yourself in relationship and seeing whether or not the thoughts you're telling yourself are true. It's really just a good way to practice a boundary, honestly, a psychological boundary internally. And one of the main examples I always remember her giving is about somebody leaving the toilet seat up and the partner getting furious and telling themselves they're doing this on purpose. How dare they leave the toilet seat up? And through the work, Byron Katie leads this person to a place of like, is it really their responsibility to always put the toilet seat down for me? I don't put the toilet seat up for them whenever I'm done using the bathroom. Why should they put it down for me? And just coming to a place where they're, instead of looking at their partner and blaming their partner, you should do this thing, they're reflecting a little bit and saying, I don't know if that's actually true. Maybe I should do something different. That's just one example. I'm thinking of so many. In my office, I often see people who are dealing with disparate desire, where one person wants sex more than the other person. And so the fight there, the blame there is, you don't have enough sex with me. It doesn't sound like that usually. That's almost a Muppet sound. Sorry, I'm going to try again. One partner is going to be saying, I wish we had more sex. I feel like I'm not wanted. I feel like you're not interested in me. I feel like you're not interested in being close to me. And the other person is saying, yeah, well, I wish you would stop asking as much. It's a turnoff when you ask so much. I feel too much pressure to even want to try. Or I feel like I'm not enough whenever you ask me for sex more on top of what we've already had. So in this case, both people are looking at the other one, blaming them for the issue. And neither one is necessarily right or wrong. It takes two to create a relationship. It takes two to tango. If you're in a poly relationship, then it's more than that. But for the majority of us, we're in a couple. And so each person is doing something that brings this dynamic into a painful place. And if you can take that moment to turn and reflect on yourself, then you might respond differently. So in the case of the person who wants to have less sex, if they always respond with, I'm not enough, I feel so much pressure, I feel like you don't care, then I'm saying no thank you. If they were to reflect, something that might come out of it, it's going to be different for everyone, but something that might come out of that internal reflection might be, maybe I want to be more clear with my partner around this. And that clarity could sound like something like this. Who knows? Every couple is different, every relationship is different, every dynamic is different. But here's an example of one thing that might happen. You know, I really understand that you want to have more sex. I totally get that that is something that you're craving. And I want to be really clear with you. My lack of interest in sex has nothing to do with has nothing to do with you. I'm attracted to you. I want you. I even want to have sex with you. I don't want to do it as often as you. And I want you to know that I'm not going to unless I really want to. And that means that sometimes you'll be disappointed, and I know that. And I'm willing to be with you even when you're disappointed. Some people wouldn't be, and that's okay. It might be, I'm willing to love you, and I might not be right next to you while you're disappointed, but I'm willing to love you even through that. Please know that I'm not going to get mad or hurt or fall into a shame pit anymore when you ask me for sex. Instead, I'm just going to say, no, thank you, not right now. And that's it. And then we'll move on. And I'm not going to let it affect my mood as though there's something wrong with me because there isn't. That's an empowering stance, right? That's amazing. And I'm not saying it's easy to come to that place. It takes work for all of us to arrive to these places where we're a little bit more, the word that came to me is zen, when we're a little bit more zen and things don't bother us as much, and we're not listening to the internal stories and also the external judgment that's coming at us. And instead, we're just true to ourselves. We're authentic and honest and loving, still compassionate to the other person, even as we're responding in a way that's taking care of us, because we actually are not responsible for each other. We're all adults. It's different with children, but in an adult relationship, we are not responsible for each other. We can choose to be in partnership. We can choose to have a bond, but it does not mean that either one of us is responsible for the other person's happiness, the other person's feelings, the other person's life. On the other side, if this person who's asking for more sex were to do a little U-turn and reflect on themselves and ask these questions of like, what am I doing that might be problematic in this relationship? How am I showing up that might be causing a reaction in my partner? Then again, this is just one example of many. People are so different. There's so much variety, even in this one issue, disparate desire, that is so common. And so this person who's asking for more, they might come to a place where they're reflecting and they're like, oh man, I actually really do put a lot of pressure on my partner to make me feel good through sex. And if they don't have sex with me, then I feel like a bad person, like I'm not good enough, like I'm unwanted. And none of that has to do with my partner. Ooh, maybe I should work on this. Maybe I need to calm down asking them to fill this internal need, and instead I'll fill it in the ways that I can. I'll feel their love and desire for me in ways other than sex. I'll start training myself to be aware when they do little things for me, or they're just kind to me, and they're showing me that they want me in those ways. And that's just one example. There's so many other ways in which people have this pattern of looking at their partner and saying, you're what's wrong, you need to change. I'm thinking in my own relationship. So I've talked about this before. My primary partner is a rather stoic person, not super chatty, not super emotional even, like pretty steady emotions rather than big spikes or anything like that. And also pretty introverted, like willing to be on their own a lot, not super social, happier reading a book than hanging out with people often, not all the time, but often. Whereas I'm pretty emotional, I have highs and lows, I am pretty chatty in the end, even though I am an introvert, but I still like to chat, especially with my partner. And I am somebody who's rather social. And so we can get into a little bit of a blame pattern where I'm looking at my partner going, what the heck is wrong with you? Why don't you want to talk to me? Why don't you want to engage and have fun and play with me in this moment? Whereas my partner is looking at me going, oh my God, can you be quiet? Is it possible for you to just like shh and do something calm and chill and by yourself so that I can do this thing by myself? And again, neither one of us is wrong. Neither one of us is right either. This is that gray area of, yeah, you're different people. You want different things. There's nothing wrong with that, but it does make it a little challenging whenever you want to live your life together. It's something you have to navigate rather than something just flows easily. And so rather than doing the blame game, if we each look at ourselves and we look at our behavior and we look at how we're showing up, there have been times whenever my partner recognizes, oh, if I would just tell her, right now is not the time, let me do this thing that I'm doing for the next hour and then I'll be in a space to chat with you, then I'll calm down and leave them alone. Whereas often my partner's tendency is to be a bit more like, okay, I'll get more quiet. I'll show through my behavior that I don't want to talk and she'll get the message. I'm not going to get that message, not a mind reader. It is much, much better for me if my partner's willing to make that external share of, I'm not in a space where I can be social with you right now. I still love you. It's not that I don't want to be social. It's just, that's not what I want right now in this moment. Give me an hour, give me 2 hours, and then I'll be ready for that kind of energy. And then on my side of things, I have learned that a lot of the time, it is better for me to just take care of my social big energy in other spaces, different partners, close friends, rather than only bringing that to my partner, which is usually my tendency. I have a pattern of making my partner the number one person in my life, convincing myself that I have to be close to them all the time, which is not true. But that's what I learned growing up. I learned that your partner is the person you spend all of your time with, constantly. And it took self-reflection. It took multiple U-turns over many years for me to come to a space of like, oh, wait a second, this isn't actually healthy for either one of us. Relying solely on my partner to fill all my needs puts way too much pressure on them, impossible expectations on them, and it just leaves me feeling frustrated and disappointed. And so all of that is really just a way to shift from the blame game to turning towards yourself, asking yourself questions about what you can do. But I have a practice I want to share with you that I think is so useful for beginning to build the skill a bit. It does two things really. One is it begins to open you to the idea that both people are contributing. It's not all your partner's fault. There are things you are doing too. And then the other thing it does is it invites a little bit more of like optimism, curiosity, a shift in perspective to where you're not just focused in the way that you've always thought about the issue, and instead you're playing with new ideas a little bit. And so here's the practice. Anytime you have a disagreement with your partner, after the disagreement, after you've calmed down a bit, or even as you're still like a little worked up, this will help you calm down in a lot of cases. What I suggest you do is a journaling exercise. I always set a timer for myself. That makes it easier for me. So I set a timer for about 8 minutes. In the research, whenever they were having couples do this, I think the time was 7 minutes. It doesn't really matter. Find the time that works for you. Somewhere around 10 minutes is plenty. And what you do in those 10 minutes is you write a letter. And the thing that you're writing about is the disagreement that you just had with your partner, but from the perspective of a third party who cares about both of you. And so if I'm writing this letter, then I'm thinking about this interaction my partner and I just had. I'm thinking about it as though I'm seeing both me and my partner outside of myself, different people. I care about both of them. I want what's best for both of them. And I'm writing down what I saw happening in the interaction. What this practice does is it begins to really open your mind up to be aware and conscientious of the other person's needs. We don't always have the same needs at the same time. Sometimes we have conflicting needs. It does not mean that your relationship is bad or anything like that. All it means is you need to find a different way to navigate this experience, because the way y'all are attempting to navigate it right now just causes pain for both people. It doesn't actually resolve it. Whereas if you can look at it through a different lens, if you can be a little bit more curious about, okay, what's actually going on here? And you can see both perspectives, then eventually the place to go to is to just reflect on yourself. What am I doing in this interaction that I could change? Either changing with the hope that I'll get a different outcome, making a clear request rather than complaining, setting a clear boundary rather than just losing it on your partner whenever they upset you, or feeling extremely hurt whenever they upset you, whatever the case may be. Or it might just be, how could I react differently? In this particular interaction, I was not my best self. I behaved in ways that just set my partner off and made us both feel worse. How could I react differently? And when I react differently, my partner is going to respond in kind. Most likely, not all the time. I will say, this is not all the time, but in a healthy relationship, when one person changes, the other person is either going to shift with them or they're going to grow apart. That's how it is. As you do your personal work, as you move up in levels of emotional intelligence and the ability to self-regulate and communicate what you're wanting more effectively, and also to just take care of yourself better, as you do all these things, your partner is either going to join you in that or y'all will drift away and you will find somebody else who is more at the same level as you. That felt like a lot of information. So let me just kind of sum it up real quick. We'll do a quick summary and then we'll close for this week. So often in relationship, we look at our partner and we blame them for the problem. If you would just change, then we'd be fine. When in fact, the only thing that we can do, the only thing we can expect is to look at ourselves and go, how could I change? What could I do differently? How could I show up differently and affect this pattern in a new way? And one of the ways that you can even begin building this muscle is with an exercise, writing that letter, thinking about any disagreement y'all get into, and writing a letter from the perspective of a third party who cares about both of you. And that'll start building the neural network that holds the ability to look at yourself and also look at your partner with compassion rather than simply blaming them. I hope this is helpful. Please, again, feel free to leave comments, ask questions. I read everything that you write. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, send it to anyone who you think might benefit, and I will see you in future videos. Bye for now.